This is the Shawn Campbell Show, a podcast for the aspiring and hungry entrepreneur.
Shawn Campbell Show, and this is a podcast by and for entrepreneurs, and this is take two with Morgan Lange, because we had actually did a podcast. We did this a few weeks ago, but I think I screwed it up pretty bad, and I couldn't download it. So Morgan was very, very gracious, and I thank you so much for joining me again. Thank you. How are you today?
Muy bien, gracias. ¿Y tú? ¿Cómo estás?
Bien.
Thanks for having me back, Shawn. It's a pleasure. I'm happy to do it. It was a lot of fun last time, so here we go. We'll do it again. And I'm excited about the live event we'll be doing coming up soon.
Yeah, that's going to be a little different spin on what we're talking about today, because I want you to highlight, obviously, Azuli, but we're going to have if you're watching this, I'm going to get this out as soon as possible, because this is really going to promote that as well. So
yeah, it's exciting.
So thank you so much for your time. And how have you been? How's business been?
Good. Things have been steady. Having great client engagement despite COVID and all the things that have been changing, and the different spin of the world, it seems. And I'm very grateful to say that business has been steady, and with more online presence, more people are looking to reach new communities in new ways. And so translating their content into Spanish helps them reach whole new communities pretty quickly.
Yeah, and you just kind of hit upon what I want to really emphasize, because we've had some awesome discussions, both during the first one that I messed up, and then before and after that. You really educated me on the difference between a translator and an interpreter, or translation and interpretation. Can you get into that a little bit for us, please? Sure.
So the two terms are often interchangeable for most folks, but they are very distinct and in this field. So I'll quickly talk about the distinction. It's very simple. Translation is working with written text, and interpretation is verbal. So for instance, translation might be taking an English website and translating it into Spanish, or a document, legal documents, contracts, could be marketing materials, anything written, really, and also online content that may be pre-recorded, could be subtitled videos, etc. So that's translation, whereas interpretation works with the oral form. Verbal communications could be a webinar, live event, virtual event. I work with attorneys doing legal interpretation for depositions and interviews. As interpretation is working with the verbal form of communication. It might be a live event, a virtual event, where people are having, presenting or having conversations. It could be a legal hearing, maybe a deposition or an interview with an attorney, conferences, all kinds of different opportunities. So they are distinct. Translation is written, again, interpretation is verbal. And so a lot of people say they're looking for an interpreter to translate their website. So that doesn't quite work. So that's something I always clarify with my clients when they give me a call or send me an email. Because so many people use the terms interchangeably, I have to really clarify what they're looking for. If they're looking for translation, I will translate. If they need interpretation, I will interpret. And to clarify, I am trained and certified in both translation and interpretation. Most people in the field choose one or the other. They like to do maybe medical interpreting, they work in a hospital, or they do legal interpreting, work in a court setting. A lot of translators work with agencies that get out there and get the clients, and then sort of distribute the translation projects to independent contractors, usually doing translation. And at Azuli, we do both.
Yeah. Are you surprised by some of the marketing materials that you may come across that are not translated well? We should keep it like that.
I see that often.
Yeah.
I clean up a lot of bad translations. It's
Mhm.
disappointing to see how many people are out there creating subpar translations.
Mhm.
I'm not saying I'm the only one that can do it well or I do it best, but I often come across translations that have words that don't exist. They're very Spanglish-sized.
Yeah.
They're not proper English or Spanish one way or another. And often I see content that hasn't even been spell checked. So, could be something as simple as missing accents on certain words or just completely misspelled words. I'm astounded actually at how often I see that. And a lot of translators will not work with previous translations because it can be actually more time consuming
Mhm.
and more distracting than just starting from the beginning with fresh text and transforming it into the other language. So I do see it often, unfortunately. So that's when I stress the importance of working with somebody who is a professional, trained, and certified translator or interpreter, given the situation. Because in our country, in the U.S., this isn't true in all countries, but anyone who is bilingual or says they're bilingual can claim to be a translator. So for folks like myself, I have a degree in translation and interpretation studies, and I'm certified through the Arizona Supreme Court as a legal interpreter, and those are voluntary. I don't have to have those certifications unless I choose to work in the court system. That's really, the court and medical systems are typically the only places where certifications are required. And so there are a lot of people out there who claim to be translators, and they are getting clients and producing translations, and they can produce products that are really misrepresenting the brand, the company that hired them, and that's really unfortunate. I've seen some pretty big companies with branding materials out there that really misrepresent their brand. They're poorly produced. It's very disappointing. Mm-hmm.
Wow. And you're able to do all this from that one Spanish class you took in high school. That's all you did.
That's right. That's exactly right. Yep. Yeah. So I've been
tell us about
studying.
your history. Tell us about your
Yeah.
history. Where
So
you live.
I grew up. I didn't grow up in a bilingual household. I started studying formal Spanish classes when I was young, and I had this experience where the adults that I talked to as a child would tell me, "Oh, yes, I took 3 years of Spanish in high school, but I don't speak a word." And even as a young person, I thought, well, that's a real shame. Why do we do this? This is our opportunity as a culture, as a country. All of us have to take another language in school, and there's a reason for that. And I found that important even as a young person, and more so as I went through high school and kept studying Spanish into college. So I've been studying formal Spanish my whole life, and then I started traveling abroad in my 20s. And actually in my teens. I went on my first backpacking trip when I was 17, and then did some more of that in my 20s, and eventually ended up living in southern Mexico for a number of years. And that really solidified my connection and my commitment to my bilingualism. And when I came back to the States, I was really committed to continuing my professional work somehow in being bilingual. I didn't know what that would look like. My previous career wasn't the best fit for me. I started out in environmental sciences, and I did conservation work for a number of years, and I am still very passionate about that, but it wasn't the best career fit for me. So when I came back to the States, I started looking into what I could do professionally as a bilingual person and how I could make that part of my career. And that's when I discovered the fields of translation and interpretation, and that brought me back to Tucson and back to school. And that's when I really got the skills that I needed to be a professional translator and interpreter. And then that's when Azuli Language Solutions was born.
Yeah, and you seem your personality and your drive, because we've talked a lot about marketing and whatnot. How much of that attention to detail do you think makes you really good at what you do?
Well, certainly when working with translation, every word I analyze for meaning. every phrase, every what we call chunk of information. I really pay attention
every
to
book
meaning.
behind you in a particular order for a reason too.
It has been specifically coordinated for a certain look. That's right. Yeah, exactly. So I do try to relax on being too perfectionistic because it can really get in the way. But as a translator, I really get an opportunity to use that to the benefit of my clients. Because, like I said, I see lots of poorly produced translations out there where meaning is lost, something doesn't quite fit, or something has been completely overlooked or left out or ignored, maybe on purpose, maybe not, who knows. So I get to really shine in my attention to detail because I deal with individual words. And I really get to focus on what a client is trying to say, what message they're trying to come across. And it often translates over, excuse the pun, but into editing their English content. So because I work so closely with every single word on a piece of paper, I've had experiences where I'm translating a contract, for instance, for a local credit union. This came up, and I said, I have some English edits for you. How would you like for me to get those to you? And my client said, I can't tell you how many attorneys have reviewed this document, and you caught all of these edits in the English that none of them caught. And I'm sure they've gone through multiple edits, of course. But because I look at every word, I just catch those things. It's just part of how I work.
Yeah. Well, I know I was kind of giving you a little bit of a hard time about that, but by all means, I mean, it's made you successful now, and that I hate using that word perfectionism because you just like doing things right, you know.
Yeah,
and just because everybody else doesn't do things right, you shouldn't be, you know. Don't be I've heard. I don't think I'm as detail oriented as you. But I've heard that before from, you know, I'm to this and to that. But at the end of the day, it's like that this is kind of what makes me be able to do what I do, you know?
Right. Absolutely.
I had to write copy for, you know, X amount of clients every day, and it needs to be grammatically correct. It needs to, you know, if it's meant to be funny, I got to do it in a particular way in their voice and whatnot. So.
Absolutely. Yeah. There's some interesting research out there about how much money American businesses lose every year from bad writing.
Oh, wow.
It can be incredibly costly. And that's true in translation. And so just in writing in English, I think the statistic I came across was that American businesses lose $400 billion a year due to bad writing. So it's the same concept. You know, you don't want just anybody. You don't want your untrained professional who is in the office writing your website content.
Right.
And the same is true with a translator. You know, just because somebody is bilingual doesn't mean that they are trained to really write a good piece of writing in whatever language. You know, in my case, it's Spanish or English, whichever direction I'm going in. So it can be very costly in legal settings. Misinterpretations can overthrow cases. In medical settings, it can lead to misdiagnosis and, you know, a lot of issues. So it's really important in my field to be detail oriented and to have a good ear, a good eye, to be paying attention to all that.
Give us some idea of why it's important for, especially someone, a business here in the Southwest, should really consider having their website or any of the marketing materials available in Spanish. Why?
Well, you know, right here in Tucson, the Hispanic community makes up at least a third of our community.
Yep.
So that doesn't mean that they only speak Spanish. It doesn't mean they speak Spanish at all. But according to the statistics that I'm familiar with, 35 to 40% of just Pima County alone, where we live, identifies as Hispanic or Latino. So that means, and my understanding, the statistics that I report on, about 25% of our community is limited English and prefers Spanish in particular.
25%?
Arizona, approximately 25% of our community speaks limited English and prefers Spanish. So those are pretty significant numbers. If you're a business and you're not reaching that demographic, you could certainly be losing out on a lot of business and opportunities to really serve all members of our community. I've heard some people say in California, you can't do business if you're not doing it in English and Spanish. And I do think that Tucson has a long way to go and really should be more inclusive in terms of serving all the members of our community. Yeah. Obviously, it's hard to serve everyone in every language, but with numbers as significant as 25 to 40%, it's certainly worth considering reaching that demographic.
Yeah. Well, what is some, with, because I can imagine some business owners to say, yeah, that sounds a good idea, but I don't have anybody I can rely on that's, in my office to translate after I receive a phone call or, a message through Facebook, whatever. I mean, do you have any ideas or something they could use as a, just a solution to that issue?
Yeah, there are certainly lots of strategies that can be put in place. And that's something I help businesses with. I do consulting services for companies who are interested in approaching this market. I know lots of bilingual business owners or business professionals who aren't reaching their own market. They're Spanish speaking, English speaking, their materials aren't in Spanish, so they're missing out on a demographic that they are poised and ready to serve. Yeah. And so that's the first sort of situation. There's other companies who they want to be more inclusive and they want to provide their services or their products in Spanish, but they're nervous, they're concerned about not being able to respond to inquiries, emails, like you mentioned, or phone calls. So there are different solutions to that. We can develop scripts for people on the phone to say, listen, I'm not Spanish speaking, but I am going to pass your number on to our customer service person who is, or email responses, and Azuli can be a solution to that sort of situation in sort of ongoing needs. Or the other part that I recommend and help companies with is strategically hiring bilingual employees. So if, there right now, despite COVID and so many businesses going out of business, there are many businesses and companies that are booming and they are hiring. Some people have lost employees because they don't feel comfortable working out in the field or doing customer service, interacting with the public. So many companies are actually hiring. And it's really a great time to be hiring bilingual employees. So I can help companies, if the hiring committee is not Spanish speaking, I can help assess somebody's speaking and writing in Spanish to help them have a better idea if they're a good fit. I do caution companies from hiring bilingual and then, maybe they're hiring a bilingual tech that's out in the field doing HVAC or plumbing. And if they're hired for a certain skill set, to really not use them as translators and interpreters as well. There can be a lot of issues that come up. Like I said, I fix a lot of bad translations. So, if you're hiring bilingual, that can really elevate your business and help you stand out from the competition. And I also, help business owners understand that those people they're hired for their job. They're helping elevate your business. They should be compensated, but they're not translators and interpreters and shouldn't necessarily be translating your website. So there's kind of some key things to keep in mind in this situation.
Yeah. How did you come up with Azuli?
Azuli. Well, it took me a long time to choose a name for my business. Like I said, I'm detail oriented. So
it took me a long time too. Was it Campbell Marketing, Johnson?
Yeah, I was really careful. There were so many things I didn't want and that I did want. Unlike you, I didn't want my name in my business name. I wanted something that resonated with me, but wasn't wrapped up only in me. For the potential of selling it or franchising it, or I don't know, big dreams, right? And I also was really careful about choosing a name that had the same sound, spelling, and meaning in English and Spanish. So since I'm a wordsmith and I work with words, I was really careful about the name I chose. So it took me a long time. A lot of names were already taken, or they had some meaning in English that didn't work the same in Spanish, or vice versa. And I like the color blue, so I went with Azul, and then that's blue in Spanish, and then I took all the vowels and stuck them on the end and went with the one that I liked the best. So on the outside, it has no meaning. It is a word I made up. But for me, it has a lot of meaning. And it has a little bit of, it represents a little bit of, has the feeling of the Yucatec Maya language where I used to live in Mexico. A lot of their language has lots of Z's and X's, a lot of interesting sounds in Maya in that region. And so it kind of has the feeling of Yucatec Maya, which is a bonus.
Wow. I was wondering about that. I thought it was a spin off of the blue, and because when I think of blue in marketing, I always think of trustworthy and professionalism and accuracy, you know. So
absolutely, yeah.
But I was wrong.
Well, I like the color blue. Me personally, it's certainly one of my favorite colors, and I just kept having thoughts of blue. So I used different. I went through all kinds of different words for blue, and a lot of them are lost in English or Spanish. So it has the ring of blue, lapis lazuli, kind of comes. It's a stone, a semi-precious stone that I think is really pretty. So there's a lot of meaning for me, but on the outside, it's a word that means nothing.
Have you written a book yet?
Have I written a book yet?
Yeah.
No, I have not written a book yet.
Are you going to write a book?
I don't know. That it's really funny you asked me that. My mom will be listening to this, there's no doubt, and she has always told me that I should write a book.
Yeah, you should. You should. That's one of my goals. I do you know Trisha Beck by chance?
I do.
So she she wrote her book like in a matter of a couple of months, right? And it's done phenomenally well. And so
I saw your interview with her. That was great.
Oh yeah. I have this. She sent me a picture, and it's a picture of a book, and I'm looking at. I see it every day, and it's written, "Shawn, write the stupid book." Trisha Beck.
I love that.
So it's literally right where I can see it every day. Just to remind me I need to work on it a little bit every day.
I have not written a book. Honestly, I don't know what I would write about. I've always told my mom that, I'm not sure what I would say. So maybe one of these days. Yeah. But I have found that I love working with words, but I get stuck somewhere about coming up with the content, the original content. And this was true in my work in the environmental field, because running conservation campaigns, you have to really have compelling messaging. Has to be very, very powerful. And that I got stuck there somewhere. But if I have a good piece of writing, say in English, and I can translate that into Spanish, or vice versa, good piece of writing in Spanish that I get to sort of recreate and transform into English and really maintain all that meaning, that's where I really have a lot of fun. Yeah.
2 more questions. Do you have like a favorite author or two or three favorite authors?
Gosh, that one's tough. How do you pick one? Well, I could say, what was that?
You can name 2 or 3. 2 or 3. Don't pick one. It's hard to pick one.
It is. It really is. I could say that my favorite book, ever since I was in high school, my favorite book has been One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. I thought Ken Kesey was just a really fascinating writer, really powerful imagery. So that's the one that comes to mind first, I could say. Yeah. What about you? Your favorite writers?
My favorite book is The Sun Also Rises. So
I remember you telling me that.
I gotta go with Hemingway. I'm kind of, and Paulo Coelho.
Yeah, that's a good one. Yes.
Yeah. Every time I read
Great
The
choice.
Alchemist, I get something new out of it. So I'm kind of due to read that pretty soon. It's right here. In fact, see it?
Yeah, oh yeah, yeah,
It's
yeah.
right there. That's the
Very
graphic novel. So I get like picked on because it's the graphic novel, not the real book. I
That's
guess.
all right. That's all right.
Last question. A lot of my friends, when I see, so a lot of my friends are actually bilingual, so if I hang out with them a little bit or whatever, they have split personalities. In English, when they're very more conservative, but when they speak Spanish, they become so romantic and, you know, animated. Do you
That's a
have the
great
same
observation.
split personality when you speak Spanish?
I probably do. When I was living in Mexico, as strong as my Spanish is,
Mm-hmm.
it is not my first language, and I'm certainly stronger in English. So I found myself being somewhat limited in how I could express myself. And that's why I do translation and interpretation, but most of my work is in translation. And I like that it is not immediate in some sense. I love the immediacy of interpretation, and I also love that translation gives me extra time to really work with a piece of writing and express well what the author is trying to say, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I think so. It's funny you say this because I have a particular friend who works very closely with me in Azuli. She reviews my translations often, and we work on projects together all the time.
Mm-hmm.
We're a great team, and she is actually from the same city where I used to live
Oh, wow.
in Mexico, and we know some of the same words in Maya that
Oh, wow.
probably almost nobody else around us knows. They're very, some of them are just silly words, certain phrases, and sometimes you just express yourself better in another language. Sometimes there's just a better phrase in
The
Spanish or even
interpretation
in
of
Maya.
it.
Yeah, exactly. So, immediately I thought of Beatriz, my friend, my colleague,
Mm-hmm.
because we get extra silly when we're speaking in Spanish and Maya and English. It's a lot of fun. Yeah.
That's cool. Okay, one last bonus question. What's a country that you haven't visited yet, but you will?
Oh, man. Gosh, all of them. There's
A
so
lot
many.
of curveballs at you today, Morgan.
Yeah. I don't know. Keeping me on my toes. The first thing that came to mind was Peru. I definitely would. I've actually, oddly enough, I've never made it to South America. I've stayed in Mexico and Guatemala and sort of Central and North America. I've been to Europe as well, but there are so many amazing places in South America that I've not been to, and Peru is definitely on the bucket list. There's a lot.
I'd go to Peru just for the cuisine.
Yeah.
There's a local Peruvian. Well, I don't think they still at the Gonzvar family. They had what was the name of their truck? It was a Peruvian truck. I forgot the name of it, but it was so good, so good. And I always forget the name of the dishes, but there was a meat and a French fry and a rice dish. It sounds weird, but it was amazing.
Yes. Yeah.
And
the food is.
paella. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. The food is one of the biggest things I miss about living in Mexico. Just some of the most delicious cuisine that especially for southern Mexico, it's hard to find here.
Yeah. So how could someone get a hold of you and talk about, their needs for their business, Morgan?
Yeah, so my website is Azuli Language Solutions. That's Azuli, language, singular, solutions, plural.com. And you can reach me by email, morgan@azulilanguagesolutions.com. And on social media, Azuli Language Solutions, Instagram, Facebook, and Morgan Lange on Instagram. On LinkedIn.
Cool. And if you are watching this, stay tuned at the end, and I'll put that at the little outro, how to get a hold of Morgan as well. Okay, so any last words, any words of advice before we go?
Oh, words of advice. Gosh, give me some more direction. Anything? Well,
we're going this way, then we're going that way. This way.
Certainly a piece of advice in my world, if you're a business owner or business professional in our region, in Tucson in particular, and you're not reaching the Hispanic market, even if you yourself are not Spanish speaking, this includes you, Shawn, there is a market out there who wants what you have. They're looking for your products and services, and if you're not sure how to approach that market, give me a call and we can talk. So muchísimas gracias por la invitación. It's been a pleasure to be here.
Muchas gracias también, mi amiga Morgan.
Muy bien.
Kinda?
Well said. Well said.
Do Spanish speakers say your name different than Morgan? Do they say something different? With me, it's always Shawn.
Shawn. Right. It sounds a little different. My last name is certainly pronounced differently. So in English, Morgan Lange. In Spanish, it turns into Morgan Lange.
See, it sounds a lot better than Shawn.
Shawn. At least they can say it. When I lived in Mexico, I just stopped writing my last name on anything. And it was just easier not to because it's so weird in Spanish.
That's funny. Well, Morgan's also going to be on my Facebook Live. Do you know what date by chance offhand? It's in like 3 or 4 weeks from.
I believe it's October
this week, I should
21st?
say. 21st, October 21st. I'm going to get this out as soon as possible. So catch her on that. It's going to be a little bit different. You think I threw a lot of curveballs at Morgan on this one? Wait till I get her live on Facebook. You better watch out.
Well, if anyone's watching and they come up with questions, please send them in. I'd love to hear your questions, see what's on your mind, see if there's any questions I can answer live for you.
Yeah. And put those questions in the comments or email either one of us. Again, I'll have contact information at the end. And everybody that asks questions on my Facebook Live, I put them into a drawing for a $25 Amazon gift card. You won the first one.
I did win.
Yes. What'd you do with the $25? Anything yet?
I haven't spent it yet, but I think I'm going to buy a gift for a friend whose birthday is coming up. So I'm going to pay it forward.
I would have spent it so quickly on myself.
You would think. I have a huge wish list, of course, but there's a special birthday coming up that I think I'm going to send an important book to my friend. Yeah.
Oh, that's cool.
So thank you. Thanks for funding that.
No, thanks for asking a question. So
yeah.
All right. Thank you, everybody. We appreciate it. Morgan, thank you so much for doing take 2.
It's been fun. Thanks for your patience. Hasta luego.
Thank you for listening to The Shawn Campbell Show. Follow us on Instagram at The Shawn Campbell Show.